What's up everybody, Ajax here, welcome to the channel. Today I want to talk about why I think this argument is absolutely pointless, and then I'm gonna have it anyway. So the age-old argument of is such and such a sport, and today's such and such video games. Those that argue gaming is not a sport usually attack it from what I consider to be a matter of semantics. I want to start by pointing to why I believe that's counterproductive, and to do so, we have to get a little bit technical here, so bear with me, it won't take long. The word sport originated in 15th century Old French from the verb déporter, meaning to divert, amuse, please, play. To seek amusement. De meaning away, and porter or porte stemming from the Latin portere, to carry. As a noun, it arose shortly afterwards as a shortening of disport and refers to an activity that offers amusement or relaxation, entertainment, fun. Now that we know how the word originated, let's look at its present day definition. Today, as a noun, the word sport is defined by the Oxford Dictionary as an activity involving physical exertion and skill in which an individual or team competes against another or others for entertainment. Personally, I think that there's a lot wrong with that definition from a philosophical standpoint, and I'll get to that later, but for now I think it's important that we understand what words actually are. And at their very core, words are nothing but a bridge connecting the ideas of one to another. And without other people, we would have no use for them at all, and it's important to remember that those words do not represent the ideas themselves. That's nonsense. Have you ever heard of a dictionary? Well, yes, of course, but since when is it satisfactory to describe something by using the thing itself in order to do so? Arguing the semantics of this subject is a bit like trying to describe a color to a blind person. It's just blue. When you consider that the meaning of a word is subject to minor or even drastic changes over time, it quickly seems that using its definition, comprised of other words that are practically made up anyway, is a rickety argument. If we were to travel back to the 15th century, we couldn't even have this discussion. It would kind of be like if in say 200 years, pizza became so associated with American football that the two words became synonymous, and then some time-traveling scholar comes back to our time period to have some intellectual discussion about how pizza is not dough, tomato sauce, and cheese, and how it's really just people running into other people for entertainment. All I'm trying to say is that video games are not sports, they're pizza. Now that we've established how counterproductive having this argument on a matter of definitions is, I would like to spend the next few minutes being a hypocrite. Pretend that we do need to satisfy today's definition of a sport. I want to hone in on the word exertion. If I were to argue that video gaming does not qualify as a sport from today's definition of the word, this would be my first attack. How can you call twiddling your thumbs while playing a console game physical exertion? Here, we can see that as a noun, the word exertion has two definitions. We'll start with the least common of the two, the application of a force, influence, or quality. This is pretty basic, and from a physics standpoint, this definition validates video gaming as a sport, as moving your thumb qualifies as an application of a force without question. The predominant definition of exertion, however, is physical or mental effort, and since we're playing semantics here, that means we're playing dirty, so there's no way we're going to ignore that or in between physical and mental. But whatever, we're already here, why not cover all of our bases by checking out the word effort? The lesser used definition of effort is similar to exertion. In fact, exert is literally used in the definition. But we need not concern ourselves with this loop because this very clearly satisfies our criteria of gaming as a sport by this definition path. But it's only when we consider the most common definition of effort, a vigorous or determined attempt, that we encounter the root of this argument and why I believe that the answer to this question should not be decided, if at all, by using definitions. When looking at the word vigorous' definitions, you find yourself using relative terms like strong and healthy and full of energy. Strong, yeah, but like compared to whom or to what? And healthy, what's good for the goose is not always good for the gander, right? And full of energy. Literally everything consists of energy. Literally everything. The second most common definition is characterized by or involving physical strength, effort, or energy. And that's not saying anything new. And there's that damn energy word again. We could go into the third definition, which is just forceful, and that doesn't take us anywhere either. You can see how the water gets a little murky when we start going in a loop like this. I would like to argue that the physicality should be removed from the perception of what is a sport, and this is why. Because it's easier to make my argument. Oh, and also this. From the birth of the word in the 15th century to its current day use, the concept of entertainment has remained within the definition of sport. Whereas athletics are a great choice for someone to exercise these days, I highly doubt that 15th century hammer throwers were doing it to tone their triceps. Jobs were still mostly laborious back then. People needed to escape a lot more than they needed to work out. To oversimplify it, you have a group of people that need a way to disconnect from the mundane stresses of life, and most likely that get enough exercise from, well, living. The origin of sport, deporte, has no emphasis on physical exertion. But now that we've established that the physicality argument is nothing but a mess of relative descriptors and definition loops, I would like to take a look at a few of the other arguments someone could use against video games being a sport, and quickly address them before we move on to the philosophical side of this argument. Another side of this debate could be that you need to be competing with another or others for entertainment. Depending on the person, competition with oneself can be just as intensive as with another, and we cannot discount the competition with one's environment. After considering this, you can also consider that even a single-player video game can be considered competitive entertainment. And if you think something needs an audience to be considered a sport, what about esports, or Twitch, or even your buddy watching you while on the couch? And then I ask you this, are you playing a sport if you're outside alone in the backyard playing basketball? Well, by today's definition, the answer is no, but I think we would all agree that basketball is a sport whether you're playing by yourself or with a team. The problem is, I've just spent the first half of this video explaining why definitions of words can't be used as an argument, but here I am with more words to explain my point. Please be kind and ignore my hypocrisy, but these darn things just keep getting in the way of what I'm trying to show you. Think about how many things there are to experience in the universe, and then compare that to the number of words that there are in your language. It's a miracle that we can describe anything, but concrete definitions limit our philosophical minds by creating an immediate bias. So, deciding whether an activity can be called a sport is more than just definitions, and rather the potential for an activity to be sportified. If you're willing to accept that a sport is more of an idea or a concept rather than a word with a concrete, yet suspiciously ambiguous meaning, then you're ready for the next portion of this discussion, which is the conceptual similarities between traditional sports and video games. I want to point to the qualia of competition, the internal and subjective component of sense perceptions, arising from stimulation of the senses by phenomena. Qualia. Everyone knows it exists, but not everyone knows that there's a word for it. But it's okay, I mean, what even are the odds? Competitiveness is primal and exists within us all. Whether one suppresses, embraces, or succumbs to it depends mainly on their personality. And what makes a person more competitive than another is an interesting topic, one that I might consider exploring in the future. But I'm sure he's been asked to describe it, but I don't think anyone but Michael Jordan will ever know how this moment felt.
Sellers will inbound. Sellers has Jordan. Jordan with 2 seconds to go. Puts it up and scores at the buzzer. Michael Jordan.
There's an indescribable nature behind participating in or even witnessing true competition. And we can thank adrenaline for that. Adrenaline is a hormone that functions similarly to a drug, and have you ever tried to describe the effects of a drug to someone? We can get close by using words that are commonly associated with a relative experience, like saying someone might feel dizzy when they get drunk, but dizziness is qualia, so it doesn't cut it. We can only relate to that because We were all kids once, but how do you explain dizziness to an intelligent alien species that has, say, no inner ear? We can do our best to describe the body's reactions to something like adrenaline, but we can never truly explain what this feels like to experience it. The intensity of true competition, albeit with another team or player, yourself, or an environment, cannot be described. I can't speak for everyone, but having played sports at a competitive level as a kid and through my adolescent years, I can confidently tell you that I've had the same physiological response to football games as I have to triumphantly beating or tragically dying to a particular Dark Souls boss. I joke, but I'm genuinely not kidding. Escapability, not a word. Let's jump back to the old French origin of sport, deporte. De meaning away, and porte stemming from the Latin word portere, meaning to carry. Many etymologists think that this is to be interpreted as literally carrying the mind away from serious matters. Now, for some people, gaming or sporting is literally their job, and this is a bit of a catch-22 for them. But for the vast majority of us, both of these activities are used as a source of pleasure and distraction from everyday stressors. Obviously, escapability applies to practically every hobby out there, but just remember, I'm not arguing that these things make something a sport. I'm just pointing out symmetries between traditional sports and video games. I think one of the most important aspects to the fundamental idea of a sport is its relatability. Football is one of the most played traditional sports, and conveniently, it's also the most spectated. So many children have grown up with these traditional sports. We can appreciate these athletes because they're doing something on which we have a firm grasp of the difficulty. People like to watch Ronaldo because we have a firm grasp on gravity and understand how amazing it is to watch him defy it with a soccer ball. Watching someone do something so difficult, so effortlessly, garners respect. But for the first time ever, we have a generation that has grown up alongside video games and have not only that sense of nostalgia for watching someone, but also that frame of reference to understand the difficulty and appreciate it when someone is a tier above the rest. FIFA's most recent survey in 2014 states that roughly 265 million people play football worldwide. I know that's 7 years old, but that's the best I could find. And according to a survey taken in 2020, Minecraft has 126 million active monthly players. That means 1 out of every 50 people on the entire planet actively plays Minecraft. And that's just one game. Next, I want to talk about the similar skills that are needed to be the best, and the first of which is hand-eye coordination. We all know what hand-eye coordination is, but the technical definition of the term is the ability of the vision system to coordinate the information received through the eyes to control, guide, and direct the hands in the accomplishment of a given task, such as handwriting or catching a ball. Hand-eye coordination uses the eyes to direct attention and then the hands to execute a task. It's been proven that playing fast-paced multiplayer shooter games can improve your vision skills. Links in the description. And if you're doing something that will quite literally improve your hand-eye coordination, you better believe that the thing itself takes some damn hand-eye coordination. Next is the emphasis on situational awareness. Situational awareness is present and important in many aspects of life, but when you break down its requirements, you can see how it's best demonstrated in fast-paced scenarios where rapid decision-making is crucial. In sports, aside from the physical aspect of coordination, one's ability to approach a skill ceiling in a particular field, or on a particular field, depends highly on their situational awareness. It doesn't matter which side of this argument on which someone stands, it's undeniable that a honed sense of situational awareness is likewise required to be considered among the best at a video game. And just to drive my point home, here, check out this article by NBC News that talks about how some pro gamers can make up to 10 moves per second and as many as 600 decisions per minute. Propensity for camaraderie, or teamwork. Teamwork is a skill. It requires perspective, selflessness, logic, articulation or gesticulation, coordination, timing. The list goes on. Obviously, not all video games are multiplayer, but this similarity is too compelling to ignore. And if you've ever played a competitive team-based game, you've most likely been wiped out by a team that came through with such precision and coordination that you would think it was a scripted movie scene and you were the bad guys.
All right, men, remember, do not hit the white ones.
Me and my crew are gonna go on pirating forever!
Claire.
If teamwork is a skill, then it can be practiced, and if it can be practiced, then dedication directly influences one's ability to be the best, and in my opinion, that's extremely important when considering if something is a sport or not. The media and society have been dropping bombs on the video game industry for over 50 years now. To the media, classic sports are traditional, they teach life lessons, and they keep you healthy and structured. I don't claim to disagree with this, but the overall perception by the media of video games being bad for a person directly contradicts the argument that video games can be a sport. I'd like to take you on a brief thought experiment for a second. Imagine taking video games back to the ancient Greeks in Olympia around 776 AD, and for the sake of my point, let's just breeze right on by how mind-blown they would be by the technology and pretend that they could conceptualize the console, the controller, and the television as the physical parameters for a game. And we all know that Greeks love their games. Now, let's try not to completely break their brains by offering them a game to which they can somewhat relate. For Honor. Consider that they quickly discover that certain skills allow some to be better than others, and with time they notice that a few are so good that word begins to spread throughout the city. Now let's move on to the next city, introduce them to games, rinse and repeat. This is when that sometimes nasty but oh so important human trait, pride, comes into play. And at that point, a competition to find the best of the best is practically inevitable. Of course, we can't ignore some potential other interpretations, such as them associating it with more of a mental game like chess, or the ancient Greeks' equivalent, however you say that word. But I think that they were smart enough to know that it takes much more physical agility and coordination to do this new thing than it does to move a piece around on, say, a chessboard. It may sound a little far-fetched, but I could conceive that they may deem the best player at a game like For Honor to be the greatest military strategist of their time. Though the word sport was not around at the time, the idea of competitive games for mass entertainment certainly was. My argument is that these Greeks might have looked at these video games in a vastly different light than we currently do, with the stigmas that society has placed around playing them. In conclusion, all I'm trying to say is that physicality was not required for something to be considered a sport when the word was conceptualized. So at what point have we just molded the definition into what we want it to be? Whether video gaming is or is not a sport is an unproductive conversation. We should only evaluate the conceptual symmetries between these two ideas. One day, hundreds of years ago, someone or a group of someone, somewhere, gave an idea a name. Then they used an assortment of other ideas with names to describe it. Over the course of history, we have taken those words and the ideas behind them and molded them to best fit with the context of today's world. And it's important that words evolve, because times change and perspectives change, but it's irresponsible to argue a topic on a foundation of something that could be considered a matter of opinion. I mean, what's next? Are video games actually video games? So what's the answer to the question, are video games a sport? I don't know, but fundamentally the similarities between these two activities are too compelling to leave undiscussed. And if after all of this, you're still convinced that physicality is required for something to be considered a sport, I introduce to you virtual reality. Now get out of here. Go ask your friends what their opinion on the matter is, and then tell them that they're stupid for having one. That's it for now. Ajax out.